This section is called Your Career and Work Goals, and of everything in the planner, this is the section that I'm personally most proud of. It's the one that I really love and I'm most attached to, and I think that's because it's the one that I think can make the biggest impact in your career, because I know how incredibly busy you are and how much you care about supporting everyone else in the organisation, but that means you may not always necessarily have carved out time to think about your own professional development and what you would really like to achieve for your career and for your work, for the organisation you work in. So all the exercises we're about to look at are going to help you to focus on you and really set yourself up for a year that you can look back on and think, oh, I feel so much more fulfilled, I feel so proud, I feel so happy with what I've achieved. So let me talk you through it. You'll see that on this very first page, it explains there are some different activities you're going to work your way through. They are called Identify What You're Aiming For, Ideas You Already Have for Your Goals, Look Back to Look Forward, Your Values, Feedback, Key HR Areas of Influence You'd Like to Focus On, Career Enhancing Skills You'd Like to Develop, and then finally, Your Goals. So these 8 sections all correspond to the activities. So there's one activity here, which is the Look Back to Look Forward activity. I'll talk you through that in a minute. There's this activity here, which is Your Values. There's this one, which is about feedback. Let's keep going, The page I really want to show you comes right at the end of them all. It's this one. So this is the one page. If you're going to complete anything in the planner, this is the one that I think potentially could have the biggest impact for you, could make the most difference. It's called Your One-Page Professional Development Plan. As you complete all those activities that I showed you on the previous pages, you then just write the answers to each activity in here. And what that means is that when you've worked your way through all the activities and filled in this plan, you have got a one-page plan that is going to be your guiding star for the year ahead. So to really keep it in front of mind, you want to turn the page over or put a sticky tab in there or a post-it note or take a photo of it and stick it on your wall. But you've probably found this has happened before. If you write down goals that you're really excited about but put them in a drawer, you might forget all about them. So I'd really love you to keep this page at front of mind once you've filled it in. But let me help bring this to life a little bit more by talking you through the exercises that you have to go through to then be able to complete that one-page professional development plan. Right, the very first thing is this one. What are you aiming for? So really take a moment to think about, what is it that you ultimately want to achieve? And that may not be this year, it might be something you're aiming for over a longer period of time, or it could be something that you're aiming for in 6 months. It doesn't matter. Just think about what is the general direction you want to go in. And you'll see that I have put down 4 different options for you. So most people tend to want to choose one of these 4 options. If yours is something different, that's absolutely fine. You're going to fill in that page of your one-page plan with whatever makes most sense for you. So the different options are grow, enroll. Perhaps you're at a level you're really happy at, you're in an organisation you love working in, you don't want to stagnate though, or perhaps you're thinking, I want to learn more before I then move up into a more senior level. Or it could be that you're looking to step up. So perhaps you're thinking, you know what, I really want to go for a more senior level role. I want to either do that in the organisation I'm in, or I would like to try and move to a different organisation but at a higher level. Then you have move sideways. So moving sideways means you're fine in your job. It's not that you hate it or anything, but actually you think you'd like to try a different specialism. So perhaps you are a generalist HR professional and learning and development has really caught your eye and you'd quite like to move into a purely L&D focused role. Or it could be any manner of things. The wonderful thing about working in HR is the fact that it gives you exposure to such a wide range of skills and disciplines. So that could be one you want to choose. Then finally, we've got step out. So I hope you're not feeling this way, but if you are, then this is here. So step out could be, do you know what, I just don't want to do this anymore. I want to have a complete career change. And if that's the case, then that's what you're looking for. Step out. So have a think about that. Which one of those 4 things do you want to do? What is it that you're aiming for? Then once you've decided on that, you are going to pop it in this box here that says, what am I aiming for? Underneath the what you're aiming for section at the bottom, you'll see there's this that says ideas you already have for your goals. Now, it may be that when you're picking up your planner for the first time, you already have lots of ideas and thoughts of stuff that you want to achieve for the next year, things that you really want to do. So if you have got some ideas, then the perfect thing to do is actually start jotting them down and capturing them. So you have got this little section here to do that in there. If you used a planner last year, then it might be that you've actually already captured some ideas, you've been jotting them down as you've been working your way through the year, or it might be you've got them written down somewhere else, or they're just in your mind. Or if you're drawing a complete blank and thinking, I actually have no idea, Faye, I have nothing to put in that box, then don't worry at all. As you start working your way through the other activities, I promise you, you are going to start coming up with some ideas. And as they pop into your mind, that's the perfect time to put them in that section. The next thing you need to do for your 1-page plan is this activity, which is the look back to look forward activity. And this is one of my personal favourite activities within the planner. I think it can be so powerful. You need to give yourself a little bit of time to do this, and you're probably going to want to be in a quiet space. So get yourself a cup of coffee or your favourite drink, shut the door if you're at work and you don't want anyone disturbing you, or maybe take yourself off to a different room in the house if you're at home, and just sit down and give yourself some dedicated time to fill in this section. Because if you fill it in, not only might you get some great ideas for what you want to do ahead for the following year, you're probably also going to feel a real sense of accomplishment. Because so often we're just motoring on forwards, keeping going, keep working harder, and we just never really take that time to look back and recognise and acknowledge all that we've achieved. So I'll quickly tell you what the questions are. They are, what did you achieve? Small wins are just as noteworthy as big ones. And I already know that some people watching this video will be thinking, well, I haven't achieved anything, Faye. I'm going to completely challenge you on that. I am sure that you will have achieved something, definitely, but it can be hard to figure out what it is. So a helpful way is, if you had a planner last year, then flick through it, look at all of your monthly review sections and just remind yourself, what was it that you were working on last year? What kind of stuff did you do? If you didn't have a planner last year, then don't worry. What can be a really helpful exercise if you have an annual appraisal, take a look at that. But often people haven't got annual appraisals, so even just opening up Outlook and looking at your calendar and just skim back over the last year, it will remind you of stuff. Perhaps you started chairing some meetings at work that you'd never done before. Perhaps you launched a new initiative. Perhaps you helped someone who was really struggling at work. It doesn't matter what the wins were. It doesn't matter what the achievements were. This isn't about being a superhero at all. Just pop down everything that you feel counts as an achievement and write it down there. And don't worry as well about sticking to the space. So I've got my planner from last year, which looked a bit different because it was ring bound last year. But on here you'll see it's a bit messy. I haven't just completely stuck to the lines. As you're writing, you might find you've got ideas or you suddenly remember something else you achieved. This isn't about having your planner look perfect. It's about having it be useful for you. But anyway, let me move on to the other questions. Then you've got, what did you do to help others? I am sure there's plenty that you've been doing to help other people. Then for question 3, you've got, what are you proudest of from the last year? And that is non-optional, so you have to write that down. And it doesn't just have to have been an obvious work achievement. It might have been something different. Perhaps there's something you've done for the family or for your friends, or that's pulled you away from work, but you're still really proud of it. Or of course, it can be a work-related thing. Then question 4, what did you do for your well-being last year? This is a really important question to have in here, and it's not one to make you feel bad about. It's one to make you think about, if I've not been doing very much for my well-being, actually, I am an important person. People are relying on me. My health is my absolute most important thing in the world. Without my health, I have nothing. In that case, think about, If you've not been doing anything for your well-being, what can you be doing next year? But hopefully, especially if you had a planner last year, you have been doing some things for your well-being, because those monthly review sections, when you check in each month, there's always a little nudge to encourage you to think about your own well-being. Then question 5, what did you learn during the last year? And again, I've seen people say, nothing. I didn't learn anything. I'm really bad at learning. But when we then talk about it, it becomes very obvious that that's not true. So again, if you had a planner last year, flick through those monthly review sections, or if you didn't have a planner, flick through your work notebooks, flick through your emails, flick through your Outlook, really challenge yourself on this one. What did you learn? Are there things you learned about yourself? Are there things you learned because you read books? Are there things you learned because you went to webinars? Are there things you learned because you observed someone else at work doing something brilliantly? Whatever it is, there will be at least one thing that you learned. So you can pop that down there. Then the next one, question 6, which relationships did you develop and build? That one's in there because it's just so important. Relationships make such a difference to our happiness, but also in a work environment to our career. It's something to really, really think about. Then question 7, what are you grateful for? You have probably seen there's loads of research about the power of gratitude and how it can really help us feel much happier and more content in ourselves. So do take the time to answer that question. Question 8, what did you find challenging this year? Now, we're all going to have challenges every single year. It doesn't matter how organised we are, it doesn't matter how prepared we are, it doesn't matter how lovely everyone around us who we work with is, there are going to be challenging times. So just jot down, what were those challenging times? Because also often, if you're struggling to answer that what did you learn question, you'll find that you'll have learned stuff from the challenging times. It's when we often go through the more difficult times at work that the greatest learning seems to happen. Then when you've finished answering those first 8 questions, read them through, and then you can answer question 9, which is what insights do you have from reading through your answers to questions 1 to 8? You will have some insights. They might surprise you or they might not surprise you, but jot them down. And question 10 is, how can these insights influence your goals for 2025? And you'll find that there's definitely some ideas you've got there. Some years when I complete this activity, it gives me an insight that I really want to work towards for a big goal. Other years, it just gave me some insights for some smaller things that I'd like to achieve. But regardless, it's always really helpful. So I hope that you find it a really helpful exercise for you. Once you've answered all those 10 questions, you'll see at the bottom of the page, it says, when you finish reflecting on these 10 questions, note down your key insights in the look back to look forward section of your one-page professional development plan. So that is just when you take the most important stuff that's come out for you and pop it in the look back to look forward section. So you don't need to write down all the answers, just jot down the key insights and perhaps even the ideas for some goals that you might have. Remember, you've also got that ideas I already have section. If you feel like, oh, I'm running out of space in here, you can always pop some of those ideas in there. But then that brings us on to the next section here, which is my values. This is what the values page looks like inside your Essential HR Planner. And you may have done lots of values work before, or you might not have done any values work at all. So you may be coming to this thinking, oh, I already know what my values are. Or you may be thinking, I don't really buy into the idea of values. Or you might be thinking, this is curious. It's not really anything I've spent time on before. However you're feeling about it, I promise this is a worthwhile activity because our values are so important. I always describe them as being a bit like the stars in the sky. So I loved finding out that sailors, when they're taught to sail, they have to learn how to read the stars in the sky so they can always navigate their way home. If all their navigation equipment on the ship they're on suddenly crashes, they can always find their way home because they can see those stars in the sky. And our values are very much like that. If we're very attuned to our values and we know what they are, it makes it much easier to then make decisions or form goals or realise why we might be finding things challenging at work. They give us so much insight into ourselves and can really shape what it is that you want to do at work for the year ahead. If you're managing to work in alignment with your values, you're far more likely to be feeling fulfilled in your role. And if you can't always work fully in alignment with your values, or you're not always able to meet them all, you can sometimes look at meeting them by doing activities outside of work. And then again, that can help you with that feeling of fulfillment that we're all searching for a lot of the time. So on this values page, you'll see I just have a long list of all different words that can represent values. You may find, actually, none of those really resonate with me, or just one or two of them do. My values are different. That's absolutely fine. These are just here to help get you thinking, and you can always just jot down any other thoughts you've got, well, around here or on your brainstorming pages or in a notebook. It doesn't matter at all. But on here, the instruction that I've written in here is think about your values in the context of your work and career, and then circle the 5 that resonate most strongly with you. And then once you've circled those 5, I've got some questions for you on the next page where you can see those blue arrows. And they say, how well are your values being met at the moment? What changes, if any, can you make to help you feel your values are being fully met in the context of your work and career? And then how can this feed into your goals for 2025? So really think about those values. Don't just think, oh yes, they're them. Really give it a little bit more deep thought. Because once you've done that thinking about it, you can then write down your top 5 values. Let's find the page again. In your one-page professional development plan, you'll see there is the My Values section. So you can write down the 5 values that you've identified there. Any ideas that might be springing to mind after you've written them down, you can always put in here as well, of course. This middle section here in your one-page plan says feedback, and there is an activity for you to complete for it just here, just underneath the values section. So it's called feedback and advice. All the exercises that you've been doing so far in the planner, if you've been working your way through, have been about looking inwards. But it can be really helpful to look outwards as well, and asking for feedback and asking for advice are great ways of doing that. But I know it can feel really daunting asking for feedback. It's something that not everyone's comfortable with. So I've tried to make this as easy and approachable for you as possible. I've just given you 3 questions to ask, and I would love you to email at least 3 people and ask them these questions. The questions are, what do you think I do well? What do you think I could be even better at? Or what do you think I could be doing even better? And then finally, what advice do you have for me that may help my career going forwards? So the reason I've said about emailing is that might feel a bit less daunting, and it also gives the other person time to really think about their answers. But of course, if you'd prefer to do this as a conversation, or you'd like to get feedback in a different way, like perhaps you have a 360 review at work, then of course you don't need to follow the example I've given here. This is just here to give you an example. Then once you've got that feedback, you can just pop it onto the key bits that you want to take away. You can pop that onto your professional development plan. So just that middle bit there, you'll just jot down anything that you want to take away from the feedback on there. As well as feedback being a gift, it isn't something that you have to accept. So if you're given feedback that you don't necessarily agree with, then you don't have to worry about putting that in this section. Just use that section to put down any feedback or advice that you've been given that you think is really helpful and is going to help you with shaping your goals for the upcoming year. In your professional development plan template, you will see here a key HR areas of influence section, and I'll just talk you through how you complete the activity so that you can then pop down some information on that part of your plan. So in your planner, you'll see there are these pages for you. This is to help you think about this part of your professional development plan. So key HR areas of influence you'd like to focus on. Now, I have a few tips that I've added in this year for the planner. They're all around making a real meaningful impact at work. I'm sure you will have heard about the idea that HR needs to be more strategic, but very often no one really tells you what that means or how to do it, or ironically enough, something I've noticed is often it's the HR function that is the most strategic function in the organisation. But regardless of that, this is just a reminder that actually when you're thinking about your own professional development goals, if you can try and make sure they tie in with the organisation strategy, or they're going to help the HR or people strategy, then you're going to have an even bigger impact at work than if you're just focusing on stuff that you're really interested in. So ideally, you're going to find areas of HR to focus on that you are interested in and that are going to have a massive impact on the organisation you work for if you start making some changes around them. So I will just give you a little bit more guidance here. So the first thing here says align with your organisation strategy. Now, I know depending on the size of the organisation you work in, or how organised the organisation is, or what stage it's at, that you may or may not have visibility of the organisation's overall strategy. If you have got overall visibility, if you do know what it is, then that's great. Make sure that you've thought about it and you've read it and you've thought about, how can what I'm doing impact that? Then the next thing to think about is the HR or people strategy. So you may be responsible for shaping the HR strategy, for coming up with it. If you are, I really hope that this exercise is going to be useful for you. If you're not, and actually you have a boss who's responsible for it, or someone else in your team, just try and make sure that you've seen the strategy, that you understand it, so that anything that you now choose for yourself as a goal or an area you'd like to focus on is going to help bring that strategy to life. It's going to help it be achieved. And then finally, I've just popped on here, if you are creating this strategy and you need some help or some ideas or some inspiration, there is a little QR code there for you that if you scan it, it will open up a whole playlist of podcast episodes I have about writing strategy or being strategic that I hope will really help you with this part. But let's move on to the main bit of the key HR areas of influence. So you can see here there's a big list. I'm sure I'll probably have missed off something. If you do spot I've missed something off, please do let me know. But I've tried to capture at the top of that page all of the main areas within an organisation that HR are typically seen as having influence over. So it's things like benefits and rewards, change management, employee communications, recognition, management development and support, talent acquisition, well-being, workforce planning, equity, diversity and inclusion. There's a whole long list there. So the idea is read through that list and really think about, okay, for us to be able to achieve the organisation strategy or the HR strategy, which of these strands, which of these areas could really use some work? Or reading through this list, which are the areas that I'm really interested in? Like thinking back for a moment when we were considering about what is it you're aiming for, perhaps you really want to make a sideways move. So perhaps you do want to become a change management specialist, or you do want to become an OD specialist. In that case, it could be a really good idea to pick one of those areas as something to focus on for the year ahead and set some goals around, or just one goal around. So read through that list, and if you get any ideas sparking from it, then pop them down on the relevant section of your one-page plan. Then underneath that, I know some people find a list of words really hard to think about. So I have this little employee life cycle at the bottom here. You can see there's a little person on it. And you'll also see there are the key points of the employee life cycle written down on there. So you've got attraction, recruitment, onboarding, development, life events, retention, reward, separation, and alumni. So if you haven't really had any inspiration from looking at the list of words, then maybe considering what you could be doing in the context of the employee life cycle can really spark some great thinking for you. And again, it can be brilliant if you're tying this in with the overarching strategy, or if you're making sure you're focusing on something because you're interested in it and it's going to help your career going forward. So talking about this from like a strategy perspective, for example, if you know your organisation is massively expanding and you are going to be needing to do a lot of recruitment, then the aspects of this cycle you might want to be focusing on are the attraction and recruitment bits. So what can you be doing to improve your employer brand? What can you be doing to make it a smoother process when you're attracting people to work at the organisation? What's your application process like? What's your recruitment process like? How could you be making it even better? Or maybe the overall strategy is actually the company is in real trouble and they're going to be having to cut back, redesign and make redundancies. If that's the case, you might want to be focusing on the separation and alumni part. What can you be doing to really make sure that people, when they leave the organisation, they're treated really well, the whole process has been handled brilliantly, so that people who are left behind feel like they're still working for an employer they respect and they can trust. People who are leaving feel well supported for moving on to the next stage of their careers. Once you've looked at that employee life cycle, hopefully just hearing me even talk about it is giving you some ideas. Then at that point, you just need to flick to your one-page professional development plan, and you are going to pop in there the key HR areas of influence or aspects of the employee life cycle that you'd really like to focus on for the year ahead. This part of the planner is called Career Enhancing Skills You'd Like to Develop. And this is such an important part of it because although we just looked at the key HR areas of influence and the employee life cycle, and they're really important and really helpful for you when thinking about how to develop in your HR career, actually there are so many different skills that we can not necessarily realise can have a huge impact on our career, or that we don't really tend to focus on or set goals around, but it is well worth doing it. So I'll try and explain what I mean. These are skills that benefit any professional. It doesn't matter what discipline they work in. So it's going to benefit you whether you work in marketing or finance or procurement, whatever area of the organisation you work in. These skills in here would help you, particularly if you really want to work your way up to leadership level or you're at leadership level. So I'll just talk you through what some of them are to help bring them to life. You've got business acumen. That's one skill I'm constantly having to work on. That doesn't come to me very easily. Coaching. I think coaching skills can be hugely beneficial for HR professionals, although of course I am biased because I am a coach. Communication, written communication, oral communication, communication that's company-wide and communication that's just one-on-one. You've got collaboration, conflict resolution, facilitation, giving and receiving feedback, influencing, industry or sector knowledge, so really learning a lot about the sector or the industry you're working in, innovative thinking, leadership, networking. Gosh, I could talk about that for ages. It can make such a difference to your career. Planning, well, you can tick off planning because you're doing so well with your planner. Problem solving, process improvement, project management, public speaking, resilience, negotiation, time management. I think I skipped a few there, but hopefully that gives you a little flavour of everything that's there. Or if you're watching this video and you've got your planner in front of you, then that's fantastic. You can see that they're all there. So I would love you to think about which one or two or three of these things would I really like to focus on improving and developing and refining over the next year. And you'll see here as well, actually, I have a whole playlist. If you scan this QR code, it will take you to the playlist on my website of HR Coffee Time podcast episodes that touch on several of these things. So, for example, I have got some episodes about coaching, about facilitation, about public speaking, about time management. So if you choose one or several of these things that you'd like to focus on, then don't worry, there's lots of resources on HR Coffee Time to help you. And of course, once you've decided what the one thing or the more than one thing is that you would like to focus on for your career enhancing skills, then all you have to do is pop them into this section of your one-page development plan. Once you have all of these sections filled in apart from your goals, it's time to think about your goals. So by having done the reflection, by taking that time to work your way through all the exercises that correspond to these different sections, you will have lots of ideas bubbling away for your goals. In fact, you'll probably have too many ideas for your goals. Now, there are a couple of things you can do here. You can just write them all down on there if you want to, or you can use another resource that is in the planner. So if you go back a page, there is this section here called Prioritising Your Goals. So what I would really recommend doing is actually plotting onto here your goal ideas. It will help you prioritise. because where it's very easy to go wrong, and I know I certainly used to go wrong with this, is to try and do too many things. So you try and do way too many things in one year, or you try and do way too many things at the beginning of the year. So you need to just take a moment to think about, actually, I'd love to do all of these different goals, but which are the ones that will have the biggest impact, or that are most important to me, or that I feel most excited about? So it's a really simple grid that I have in here for you. You'll see at the top it says excited and motivated to get started with it. And then here next to it, it says not particularly excited or motivated about it. Then down here on this side, you've got most effective and greatest impact. And here you've got least effective and least impact. So all you have to do is, with your goal ideas, you're going to plot them into the relevant sections here. Once you've put all your goal ideas onto that grid, you'll have a really good idea of which ones you really need to prioritise, or really want to prioritise. They're going to be the ones that are most effective and have the greatest impact, and that you're excited and motivated to get started with. And what you might find is that throughout the year, you're going to come back and keep looking at this, especially if you do start ticking off all of the goals that you set yourself. And then you may find that things you weren't feeling as motivated and excited about actually shift into the feeling more excited about, because you've got a bit more bandwidth to do them, or you've learned more about them, or you're just feeling more confident, or you can see they'll have a bigger impact. So don't worry if you're thinking, oh, shouldn't I be doing all of these? No, it's far better to just focus on a few. And I have actually written at the bottom here, add 3 to 7 goals to the My Goals for 2025 box of your one-page professional development plan. So ideally, this is the point when you're going to finish your professional development plan and you're going to write down 3 to 7 goals on there. You don't want to go beyond 7. That's just going to be way too many to focus on. And excitedly, when you have written that in, so you've got your goals on there, you'll see you have got your whole one-page professional development plan finished and ready to go. So you're all fired up for having a fantastic year.